Hi, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of our interview with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Christopher Hedges and his new book, America, The Farewell Tour. So let's just talk about the book a little bit more. You travel around the country, which I did too for 20 years as a stand-up comedian, and I was in all those towns that you write about. So I was in Terre Haute, Andersonville. Wow. I was in Flint. I've been all those. I've been to worse places. And I played in comedy clubs that were in malls that were dying. I saw all that stuff you described, and people desperate. And so basically, what you do is in America, the Farewell Tour, you kind of you go around to these different communities, and you show the effect of us organizing our society around the altar of free markets.
Yeah.
And so the effect of that, it's just over and over every story you tell in the book, which is just heart-wrenching stories that you tell, that, we've all seen these people and the lives they live and how hard they work. And these people their lives have been hollowed out. And why do we organize our society around a free market? So, when we had Dr. Wolf on our show, and he talked about the craziness of one person decides if you get to have an economy in a town or not, if they have the big company. And so why wouldn't the town get together and decide, why should we move our company to another place to make more money? Well, let's just keep a good... So I guess the point is, what I'm trying to say badly, I guess, is that, so you visited these places, the whole, or even like Rockford, Illinois. So the whole town just gets depressed because the business leaves, or it goes to Monterrey, Mexico, or because of NAFTA. Right. And so they're left with nothing. And we treat these things as if they're individual problems,
right,
instead of societal problems.
But it's worse. We treat it as if it's the individual's responsibility.
Yes. Yeah.
So across the cultural spectrum, you've got, from every angle, if you haven't become Bill Gates or something, although I wouldn't recommend being Bill Gates, you are a failure. And Tony Robbins is telling you you're exceptional, or Oprah's telling you how to find your inner core and strength and be who you can be, and the positive psychologists are telling you to think positively, and Hollywood is ramming this kind of American myth of a meritocracy down your throat along with it. So, and television is just bombarding you with this stuff. So, I look at television in poor households and poor communities as a form of violence, because it is constantly showing you images of an unattainable lifestyle and blaming you for not achieving that lifestyle. And that creates deep despair, a loss of self-worth, a loss of self-confidence, and they've been very effective at it. And so you're right, we never ask the structural questions, or people who do ask about how the society is structured. The fact that there are no jobs in marginal communities unless you go into the illegal economy, and that feeds the system of mass incarceration, which is a primary form of social control in poor communities. That's why we have 2.3 million prisoners, 25% of the world's prison population. As the credibility of neoliberalism has declined, you've seen a harsher attack against the critics of imperialism and capitalism, both through the kind of new form of red baiting for Russia, and so you've used this. They use this shadowy anonymous group called Prop or Not.
Yes,
right. We still don't know who they are.
Right.
And the Washington Post runs a front page story on it. And names all these left-wing sites. It's total bullshit. And then Google, Facebook, Twitter, they all impose algorithms so that they're called impressions. So if you type in imperialism, or if you typed it in a year and a half ago, and I had written an article on imperialism, maybe one of the articles that would come up. Now you'll direct it to a mainstream site. So referrals by impressions have gone into precipitous decline. Black Agenda Report, World Socialist Website, Counterpunch, Alternet, down by 63%, Truthdig, where I write a column every Monday. And you couple that with the abolition of net neutrality. And it's a way of taking critics who already have been significantly marginalized and pushing them even further out of the outer edges of the digital universe. And that's, of course, why they go after RT, where I have a show. Not because it's Russian propaganda. And the director of National Intelligence Report, which Clapper put out in January, I don't know, a year and a half ago or so. 17, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite clear. I mean, they attacked RT for giving voice to anti-fracking activists, to people who attack the security and surveillance state, to Black Lives Matters. That's part of the whole picture. That is, as the situation deteriorates, and as the ruling elites become more beleaguered, then they become harsher in terms of their forms of the control of information.
So people don't seem to understand what's happening. So people will say things. People in news will say, "Well, Google's a private company, and they're allowed to do that." And
Google?
because the law hasn't caught up to where we are technologically, doesn't mean it's right. It used to be the law that Rosa Parks had to sit in the back of the bus. That didn't make it right. That meant that the law hadn't caught up yet to civilized society. And so right now the law hasn't caught up yet. When people are getting, I saw Matt Taibbi quoted a statistic. It was 70% of people get their news from Facebook or Google. And by that, you mean when you want to find out about something, let's say I want to find out about imperialism, I type it in, Google decides what articles come up.
That's right.
And those algorithms are done in secret, in the dark, which should already be a scandal.
Well, and there's, I think, 10,000 people at Google. I can't remember. It's either Google or Facebook. Yeah, Facebook. And they're all hired they're all like ex-military, ex-security. And that fusion between Silicon Valley and the security and surveillance state.
It should be. So what do you say to the people on the left who are like, for instance, like Alex Jones? So I say if he's horrible and we have to get rid of him, there should be a transparent process with an impartial judge that we can all rely on. You can't just willy-nilly. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah. And I mean, the other problem is that, and then you have, and this comes out of the kind of far left Antifa, where you're deplatforming people, and this is really dangerous because this opens the door for state censorship. And the people we know from history who always suffer is the left, the critics of the systems of power, not the right, not the proto-fascists, the neo-Nazis, who in many ways the state relies on unofficially in times of turmoil to help maintain control and systems of oppression against people who defy the structures of power. I find Alex Jones repugnant, of course. On the other hand, you're right. If we allow these institutions to begin to decide who has a voice and who doesn't, then we're not going to have a voice.
Yeah, I just can't believe that people don't get that there needs to be a transparent process. And again, of course, they're gonna use what? Well, go ahead.
But these people. I mean, it's like Steve Jobs, who was truly an evil human being. And I was in Zuccotti Park when he died, and and I love these kids in Zuccotti. They wanted to have a memorial for Steve.
Oh boy!
And I'm going, no. Well, you need to understand. There's 700,000 sweatshop workers in China, some of whom are jumping off of roofs, to commit suicide. But the public relations industry is so adept at manufacturing these personalities and getting us to build this false emotional relationship. They're out there. It's like Zuckerberg out there with his T-shirt. I mean, they're very good at it.
Yes.
And the system, the media platforms disseminate it. And we have created such sophisticated forms of propaganda. And people confuse how they are made to feel with knowledge. And that's why we're in such trouble, because these corporate media platforms, and I include MSNBC and PBS, and which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Koch brothers, they are dependent on these personalities and the corporations that they run, and they serve as their public relations platforms.
So you talk about, and we're here with Chris Hedges, the author of America, The Farewell Tour. This is what we're talking about right now. And, there's a lot of ironies in what's happening right now with the left and the right. So I'm just going to read from your book. It says, the radical left and the radical right, each made up of people who have been cast aside by the cruelty of corporate capitalism, have embraced holy war. Their marginalized lives, battered by economic misery, have been filled with meaning now that they're activists, right? So this is you're writing this talking about the heels of Charlottesville.
Right.
And they hold themselves up as the vanguard of the oppressed, both the left and the right, Antifa and the Proud Boys. Right. They hold themselves up as the vanguard of the oppressed. They claim they claim the right to use force to silence those defined as the enemy. They sanctify anger. They are consumed by the adrenaline-driven for confrontation. These groups are separated, as Sigmund Freud wrote, of those who engage in fratricide by the narcissism of minor differences. So you're saying, I'll just finish. It says, it was inevitable that we would reach this point where we are unable to address the rudimentary, we're unable to address the rudimentary needs of its citizens, as I saw in the former Yugoslavia and was true in the Weimar Republic and Tsarist Russia. So what's happening is that the state is no longer able to meet the rudimentary needs of our citizens. And so people on the right, because you go into detail in the book where you talk about the economic situation of the people who are in Charlottesville and holding the torches and the people on the left, they share similar economic deprivation. And I love that term about the narcissism of minor differences. So can you talk about that and how and I think that the ruling elite are afraid of the left and the right realizing that they have common interests.
Well, that's why they assassinated Fred Hampton. Because Fred was the great Black Panther leader out of
in
Chicago,
the 60s. Mm-hmm.
Was uniting. I mean, he was addressing white Aryans in Chicago who were applauding him. And,
no kidding. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I never heard that.
Fred was building a poor people's coalition.
Oh.
And as long as he remained a Black Panther, they could deal with him. That's why the FBI drugged him, burst in there, and assassinated him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's 24 years old.
So you talk about in the book that what people like Fred wanted to do in the 60s, you think is actually possible now because economics have gotten so bad, we've hollowed out. There's millions of statistics that can give people examples of how bad it is. One of them that I like to use is that 80% of all workers are paycheck to paycheck. 63% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency, and half of all wage earners earn less than $30,000 in America.
I just took a couple of notes on this the other day in the New York Times. Had a couple good articles on the plight of the working class and the plight of the middle class, and these are just the statistics. These are just 2 or 3 days ago. A decade later, the typical middle-class family's net worth is still more than $40,000 below where it was in 2007. Black net worth is down 40%, Hispanic 46%. Since 1973, American productivity has increased by 77%. Hourly pay has grown by 12%. If the federal minimum wage was tracked to productivity, it would be more than $20 an hour, not $7.25. This is the New York Times. This isn't some Trotskyite publication. 41.7 million workers earn that, which is a third of the workforce, earn less than $12 an hour, and almost none have employer health insurance. So what we've seen since the financial meltdown of 2008 is this disastrous policy of printing money, creating money out of electronic ether, an estimated $26 trillion. And where did it go? Well, it didn't go to rebuild our infrastructure. It didn't go to invest in our public schools. It didn't provide universal health care for all Americans. It didn't forgive student debt. It didn't bail out the 800 people thrown out of their homes because they were cheated on their subprime mortgages. It went into the hands of the very people who committed the massive global financial fraud.
Please make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are subscribed, there's a good chance you're not. So please check. It only takes a second. And then click that bell. And that's how you know you'll get a notice every time we drop a video. They still won't notify you every time we drop a video, but that's the best we can do. Plus, if you like the show, you want to support it, please become a patron. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And come see a live show. Go to jimmydorcomedy.com for our live schedule.